Welcome to Private Club Radio, the industry's first and only program dedicated to education, news, events, trends and announcements. Broadcasting from Tampa, Florida, ladies and gentlemen, here is your host, Gabriel Aloisi.
Welcome to another edition of Private Club Radio, episode number 31. Happy to be here with you. Once again, we have a fantastic, insightful guest on today's show. His name is Harvey Weiner. He's the founding partner at Search America, one of the premier executive search firms in the private club industry. By the way, Search America was the private club industry's first senior management search firm. It started over 3 decades ago. That's not Harvey's only first, though. He's been credited with creating the GM COO model. So if you have that designation, you just might owe Harvey a thank you. Now, during the interview, I pick Harvey's brain on a number of issues related to employment. So if you're a job seeker or you're looking to change career paths, this is one you're going to enjoy. By the way, I reached out to Harvey to get him on the show thanks to listeners who voted for this topic on our website. We had a number of folks who were interested in employment and hiring issues. I do my best to get the thought leaders and experts in the industry that will address your concerns on this show. So please don't be shy. Let me know what you want to hear, and I'll find the right guest to give you what you want. If you want to get involved, tell me what you want to hear. Go to privateclubradio.com/vote and choose one of the topics listed there, or even write in your own. Now, I'm fresh back from West Palm Beach. I was down there at the Breakers at the Florida Club Managers Association of America joint meeting with the USPTA and the Club Spa and Fitness Association folks. I gave the Marketing to Millennials presentation. It was extremely well received, which I'm pretty happy about because I know I talk about some things during that presentation that really challenge the status quo. So it's my opinion that when we think about the membership process, we really need to change the way we're thinking about it and doing it. First and foremost, we're marketing the wrong way. And I know a lot of clubs are going to say, well, we can't market, Gabe. We're a 501c7 nonprofit. We don't do that kind of thing. We're a private club. We are referral only. Well, I'm here to say that, yes, you are marketing. If you have a website, you're marketing. If you're running some sort of social media campaign, you're on Facebook or Twitter, that's marketing. There are a number of ways that your club is marketing, whether you know it or not. I call it dark marketing. But the point is, we're marketing the wrong things. I had the pleasure of meeting a really interesting gentleman a few months back and had him do a consulting session with me. He's called the grandfather of possibilities. His name's Ron Klein. And Ron is actually the gentleman who created a number of things that really changed all of our lives. He created the magnetic strip on the back of a credit card. Yes, the credit card that's in your pocket right now. That's Ron's invention. He also invented the multiple listing service. That's the system, the MLS system, you've probably heard of it referred to, that realtors use when you're going to buy your next house. I'm sure a lot of you know about that service as well. And Ron actually created the formula for growing a Purdue chicken in record time. I think it's 21 days, I believe is the number, but don't hold me to that. The point is, this guy is basically a genius. He's down here in Sarasota, Florida, and I really had the pleasure of having a session with him a few months back. Really enjoyed my time with Ron. But if you ever hear Ron give a presentation or talk to a large group, or if you have him one-on-one like I did, he's going to give you this advice. You sell benefits, not features. And that's a problem that a lot of our clubs are doing right now. We're trying to sell features. When I say features, I'm talking about your Hard True tennis courts, your Fazio-designed golf course, your 300-seat banquet facility. These are all features. And don't get me wrong, they're great features. I totally get that. But consumers in today's age are really searching for benefits. How can this improve my life? How can this add to the quality of my life? How can this experience be unique and give me something I've never experienced before? So we are marketing the wrong way, and I aim to change that. For the risk of beating the dead horse, let me give you one more example. Think of the last car that you purchased. Did you buy that car because it had more steel per square inch than its competitor? Probably not, right? But that would be a really logical reason to buy a car. But instead, you probably bought a car because you looked good behind the wheel. You thought your friends would admire you. It felt good to drive. Maybe it was good for the environment. You felt good that you were doing something and conserving our world's resources. Those are all emotional reasons to buy a car. The logical reason would be, oh, this car has more metal, so it must be better. I get more metal for my money. But that's not why we buy a car. We buy cars and we buy all luxury purchases because of the emotional benefits that we get from them. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I really would challenge you to start communicating and marketing your club a little bit differently than you're doing right now, probably. And just that little shift of focusing on the benefits instead of the features can really help improve your marketing efforts and your marketing effectiveness. So the talk I gave in West Palm Beach was all about shifting that perspective, how we reach the younger generations, the millennials. If you want to hear that presentation, I've actually got it on privateclubradio.com. You can simply click on the Millennials tab there on your screen, and you can hear the presentation, the same one that I gave in the Breakers, and get a little bit more insight on how we can start to market clubs in a more effective manner. I'm offering that course for only $49, and I promise you're going to get 10 times that value from it. I'm so confident I will offer a money-back guarantee. Now, if you're really truly serious about getting out there and marketing your club and building your membership, you've got to have the right system in place. And that's what Club Essential can offer you. Club Essential, I am so happy to say, has been a sponsor of this show for the last couple of months. And I've really enjoyed getting to know Rick Coffey, who you hear on the Inbox segment on this show, and just the incredible staff they have over there at Club Essential. I really would not recommend you a company that I didn't truly believe could help you. And if you're not keeping track of the marketing efforts that you're doing, whether it's that dark marketing I talked about, your website and social media posts, or whether it's really out there in your face marketing like billboards or magazine ads, or if you can't track the results that are coming and you don't know what's working. And that's one of the little pieces that Club Essential can do for you. It can do so much more, but that's an integral part of your marketing campaign. And I definitely recommend you take a look at what they have to offer. They have this unified suite that can really be a game changer for your club. Just check out clubessential.com. Well, without further ado, let's bring on the man, the legend himself, Harvey Weiner. Harvey, welcome to Private Club Radio.
Gabe, it is my pleasure to be with you.
Harvey, the first thing I want to talk to you about is you are credited with creating the GM COO model at private clubs. Can you tell us how that all came about?
Well, when we started the firm in 1974, it was as a result of a market study that helped us to determine that the single greatest unmet need in the hospitality business was executive search, that is, retained executive search, on behalf of the boards of private clubs throughout the world. What we found in studying the industry was that for the most part, clubs were run by the so-called three-legged stool at the time. That is, the superintendent, the golf pro, and the clubhouse manager typically reported to a member of the board who was responsible for that particular portfolio. And the board was heavily involved in micromanaging the business of the club. And typically, board members are not experienced or skilled, although well-intentioned. They don't necessarily know how to run a private club the way professional management could. So we got together then with the leadership of the trade association and created the concept of chief operating officer, which frankly is really nothing more than a nice sounding title. Every club, regardless of what you call the number one operating person, every club is run by a hybrid, and it depends on the culture of that club. Moving from the three-legged stool to the chief operating officer concept was kind of like going from driving on the right side of the road to driving on the left. And boy, there were a lot of accidents as we crossed that center dividing line.
I bet. So how did that actually change, Harvey? How did that sort of change the way that clubs are governed and, opening up positions for people that just didn't exist before?
Well, the governance model had been what might be considered adversarial, in that the board had a concept on how they wanted the club to be run, and they typically tried running it on their own, as I said, with very little knowledge or experience in the industry. What the board members knew was what their expectations and their needs were, but they didn't necessarily know how to get there. So they would typically go out and hire a hotel manager or a restaurant manager, or perhaps somebody running the local VFW or Elks Club, and put that person in charge of food and beverage. Then they try to find somebody who knew a little bit about golf and something about growing grass, because perhaps he was a member and had the best lawn in town. And before you knew it, the business of the club, running on an adversarial basis, started to crumble. That drove the industry to professionalize over the last 40, 45 years that we've been in business. So that is no longer adversarial, although that still does exist in some situations. It is now more of a partnership where the board typically becomes strategic and management is tactical. So the board is responsible for the vision thing and management for the day-to-day operations. As long as that division of responsibility is respected and handled as a partnership, you can have a successful club.
Of course, that's not how many clubs are run, though, right? A lot of times you see the boards getting involved in those day-to-day operations. So what would your advice be to a club that's sort of stuck in that situation?
Well, first of all, there is no perfection. If somebody was perfect, he probably wouldn't be either managing a club or serving on the board. He'd be off walking on water and bringing peace to the world. Uh, what I would recommend is that the board focus on their responsibility, which is strategic, and establish a strategic plan, come up with a vision for what they'd like to accomplish during their term, and employ a manager in whom they can vest their trust and confidence, and charge that manager with the responsibility of managing the business of the club on a day-to-day basis. In order to do that, the board must first acknowledge that the private club business is, in fact, a business. It's not a plaything. What management does for a living, the board does for recreation. It's their hobby. And it's important that they employ a professional manager. Whatever they call that person, you can still call the person the club manager or the chief operating officer. Uh, at some point, the board has got to turn over the day to day responsibility to one go to person, and that has to be the operating manager of the club.
Harvey, we have a number of job seekers listening to this program, and I was hoping you could give us a taste of your many years of experience in executive search. The first I want to ask you about is, where are you finding standout candidates for your firm?
Uh, the first place we always look for standout candidates is with those that we already know and have known for some time. We probably have the greatest database in the industry of many thousands of individuals, going back over 40 years. We're constantly filtering that database and adding and deleting. Uh, the best candidates we have found over the years are those with a proven track record who are known to their colleagues and are typically nominated, so that when colleagues know that we're working on a particular search, they will search their own memory bank and come up with nominees. It may be that they nominate themselves, but in all likelihood, they'll tell us about a colleague that they have known for some time and say, you know what, I think Sally or Joe would be just perfect for you. I'm going to have them call you. That's the best way to find candidates, not just people that you may meet at a cocktail party at the annual conference. You don't really get to know the character of those individuals. You may get to know something about their track record, but you don't know who they are as human beings.
Absolutely. And, for somebody who's just sort of trying to break into the industry or move up in the ranks, maybe they've been the food and beverage director and they really want to take that next step and become a general manager. What advice would you have for them, Harvey?
The first thing I would do is encourage them to find a mentor. There are plenty of people out there who have been in the business for quite some time who love nothing better, as we do, than taking people under their wing and helping to develop their skills and their experiences. There are some really excellent newbies in the industry who have great potential. But until that potential is tapped and they have an opportunity to go through some tough times, like over the last decade in the private club industry, this has been a very tough time. People who have come through this unscathed or who have learned a lesson from the experience, they're bringing something special to the table. So find yourself a mentor, understudy that individual, make it clear that you'd like someday to move on and up, and hope that you're dealing with a professional mentor who will recognize your skills and talents and refer you to a firm like Search America when the time comes that he or she thinks you're ready to take on your own responsibility for a club.
That's great advice. What are some of the skill sets that boards are looking for right now when they're recruiting the next GM, COO at their club?
And I like the way you asked that question, Gabe, because they always say that they're looking for a skill set. But when it comes right down to it, more than anything, they're looking for personality.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for characteristics as opposed to character. They're looking for, even though almost every club board will deny this, they're looking for pedigree. And what they're thinking in the back of their mind is, when we announce that we've hired this individual as our new manager, how will our membership react? So if we tell them that he's coming from, let's say, a $3 or $4 million grossing club, and our club is 10 or 12 million, and the club he or she is coming from may not have the prestige of our club, even though we as a board are confident that this candidate has the ability to adjust. How are we going to feel? Do we have the backbone to courageously stand by our decision when we present this candidate to the membership? So the bottom line is, they may say that they want the best qualified candidate, but at the end of the day, they're likely to select the candidate who gives them the warm and fuzzy feeling during the interview, and they're confident will be accepted at first blush by the membership. But I've got to tell you, anybody can fake it for an hour or two.
Sure.
It's not that difficult. But if you want a manager who's going to last a while, let's say more than the average of under 3 years, then you really need to be probing this individual's track record. What are this person's behaviors? How does he or she react under pressure? What questions do we need to ask? And most importantly, the board must define what their expectations of a candidate are before they even begin to recruit or evaluate prospective candidates for the job.
Is there any good information out there or something standard that a club's board could find, that would give them sort of a template of what to actually look for?
You're asking terrific questions. I'm going to give away some of this, and as a result, we're going to find more boards trying to do this on their own. That's a risk, not a risk necessarily to revenue for my firm, but a risk for the clubs, because you have board members who are themselves typically successful in their own livelihoods. They run successful businesses. They may be a McDonald's franchisee and perhaps think they know everything about food and beverage, or they may run a successful legal practice. So they think that they know exactly what to look for and how to find that in candidates. So they will go online, they will read books, but there are basically about 80 key characteristics that we review with all of our new client club boards. And some of those characteristics are indispensable. If you don't have that, you shouldn't even be considered a candidate. Others are nice to have. So the important thing is to look at the characteristics that you believe you need in the manager that's going to run your business, your club, and then decide which ones are must-haves and which ones are nice to have. When you see the candidates, if they don't have the must-haves, pass immediately. If they have all the must-haves, then start doing an inventory of the nice-to-haves. And those that have all the musts and a few of the nice ones, those are the ones you should seriously consider. Remember, this is not like a dating service. You're not looking just for compatible personality. that you'd be comfortable sharing a beer with. You're not hiring a buddy. You're hiring somebody to run a multi-million-dollar business, not just on your behalf, but on behalf of your constituents. Those are the members of the club that elected you to the position on the board. They're counting on you to represent them.
Absolutely. Now, I don't want you to give away your secret sauce because, of course, that's proprietary information. But, Harvey, what are some of the intangibles that you would look for?
The most important characteristics is, does the candidate get it? Does he or she understand what a private club is all about? That it's a refuge. Like, this is a tough and a scary world out there these days, and people need a place that they can go to where they can recreate and relax and be with their buddies. There's a Cheers component, the old television show where everybody knows your name. If the candidate doesn't get that, if they're strictly a bean counter who's going to sit in an office and make sure that the numbers are right, that person ought to be a controller in a club, do something administrative, but don't be the manager of a private club. One of the key criteria that boards use to determine whether or not their manager is going to stay is how visible is the manager. So we look at that when we check references. Is this individual visible? Now, of course, that's a fine line. You can't be there 24/7. Some boards expect you to be. In one case, we jokingly recommended to a new manager that he buy himself an old car. It doesn't even need to have an engine. Put up a sign near the porte cochere at the entrance and a sign saying general manager parking only, and leave the car there all the time. Doesn't ever have to drive away. Just clean it every once in a while. And people will drive up to the club and say, the manager is here. That's good. But they want to see you. They want to know that you know who they are. So that's important for us to look at. Technical skills, absolutely. You can't bring somebody in who's been in high tech and expect them to become the general manager of a private club. One of the single most important components of managing a club is that you have to have a social worker's kind of an attitude. So you find a social work personality, and add to that the technical skills of food and beverage and some knowledge about how to grow grass and at least know the lingo of golf, and know how to schmooze people properly. And most importantly, the manager has to know how to hire well and train properly. Then you've got yourself a good winning combination. But to just take a shortcut and to look out there for somebody who's managed a local hotel or restaurant, that's not going to work. And the reasons are very simple. In a hotel, a good customer may come by every 2 or 3 months. In a restaurant, a good customer may come by every couple of weeks. But in a club, your good customer, that is your member who actually owns the place of business in many cases, you can see that person 2 or 3 times a day. So if the menu doesn't change or the personalities of the people serving them and attending to their needs isn't right, you're going to have a lot of problems. So when you're looking for a general manager for a club, find somebody in the club business with a proven track record. Forget wishful thinking when it comes to selecting your manager. He or she has either got it or they should be shown the door.
I love the way you put that. In your opinion, what causes turnover in club management and how can you mitigate it, Harvey?
I love your questions, Gabe. Turnover in the private club industry is a disaster. Forgive me, I was going to cuss there for a minute, but it is something that we in the private club industry should really be embarrassed by. However, some turnover is intentional, whether it is acknowledged at the get-go or not. For example, it's not unusual for a club that's about to go through a multi-million-dollar renovation or a house cleaning or whatever the situation might be that requires a project-oriented manager to come in and either kick butt or see to it that the reserve funds are properly expended. They bring this individual in and say to him or her, yeah, we do want you long-term, but our first priority is this, take care of this project. Well, once that project is done, they may just need a caretaker manager. So in that case, it's the board that's at fault in not being totally honest and upfront with the candidate. When we do a search, we evaluate what the real priorities and needs and expectations are, and we're very candid with prospective candidates. If we see this as a short-term situation, then we look for somebody who has a track record of having accomplished that type of a project elsewhere. No wishful thinking. You've either done it or you haven't. And if you haven't, you're not going to get an opportunity to learn on the job at our client's club. But on the other hand, if you have what could be a stable situation and you have a manager with a family and the kids are in school and the family is involved in church and other community activities and they have what they're looking for in that community, how can any headhunter go out there and with any integrity attempt to get that individual to leave that stable situation and move somewhere else, unless we really believe that it's in his or her best interest? But we don't always know. For example, we did a search in a small town in Ohio. And people in Ohio are going to hate me for this, but I'm not going to identify the town. And I had recalled that a manager that we had met mentioned that his wife had grown up in that community. So I called him and he got very excited and I got excited. And this seemed like a marriage made in heaven. And he said, I'm going to go home and talk to my wife about it. I'll call you tomorrow. She calls me the next day. He says, I talked to my wife and she says, there's no way in hell I'm ever going back to that town. On the other hand, I called a guy in Georgia years ago, described a situation in a Midwestern town, and you could hear the tears in his eyes over the telephone. He said, you won't believe this, but just yesterday my son was diagnosed with an issue that can only be addressed in that particular town where they have a specialized school system for him. So you never know.
Wow. Yeah, you do never know. That's for sure. Hey, we've had Greg Patterson on our show a few months back, and he was a wonderful guest. Of course, he was the manager of the Beach Club for the better part of a quarter of a century. But a lot of clubs now, we see a really quick turnover, right? Managers might only last 2 to 3 years. What's causing some of this excessive turnover, in your opinion?
Some managers are just turnover prone. Some managers like the idea of turning over. If, as I say, if they have a stable background and their family is well set and loves the community they're in, it makes no sense to make a change. The problem is that some managers go into a situation knowing up front that it's not going to be long lasting. Let me give you an example. I got a call from a guy recently who said, I need to get out of this club. I can't stand it. The managers are treating me with disrespect. I don't like the people that I'm working with. And I don't even like the community that I'm living in. And my family and I just really need to get out of here. So I asked the logical next question, what would you like to be doing and where would you like to be doing it? He said, if you could find me someplace, something just like this club, I'd really be happy. Come on. I mean, think it through. Some people just are project oriented and like to go into a club and put out a fire and then move on to the next club. Another reason, another contributing factor to turnover is there are some unethical people out there that will place, there's a difference between a search firm and a placement firm. And sometimes placement firms like employment agencies will place somebody in a job, and then as soon as the guarantee period is over, they will recruit that individual out of that club. We won't ever do that. We never have done that in the over 40 years we've been in business. It's unethical. You're paid a fee to recruit somebody. If you take that person away from your former client, it's stealing. It's dishonest. So that is a big contributor to the turnover in the industry. We don't represent candidates. That needs to be made very clear. A professional search firm represents the board of directors, determines the needs and expectations of the members of that club, and brings to them candidates that have the ability to manage their club, in our opinion. Then it's up to the board to select the individual that they're going to hire. We are not in the business of finding jobs for people. Now, that should not be misinterpreted as we have no interest in talking to people who may be out of work. At any given time, you've got hundreds of managers in the club business who are, in fact, out of work. Sometimes it has nothing to do with anything they've done. It's just circumstances that were unavoidable. So we're human beings first. We're headhunters then as well. But again, our obligation is not to help people find jobs, but to help clubs find the manager that is properly suited to their needs. Just to give you a little more insight into one of the contributing factors for management turnover is very often the manager's fear of the board turnover and who is going to be the next likely president. Uh, it's very often you'll have somebody say that they're going to become the next president and they want the manager to take the club to the next level, but they don't define what they mean by next level.
I love next
and that's
level.
Scary.
Everybody uses that term.
Creates it creates a lot of anxiety on the part of the manager. But here's the reality, Gabe. Because of the nature of the private club industry, unless you live in a major metropolitan area, if you change jobs, you're going to have to relocate your family. That means uprooting and putting down roots again somewhere else. That can be a really traumatic experience for your kids. It's kind of like being in the military. It's not the same as if you're managing a restaurant and you can go down the street and manage another restaurant. There may only be one or two clubs in your community.
Right.
So you've got to think about that before you just jump ship. There was one time I was sitting on a panel with a placement guy, and the question was asked, how often should a club turn over their manager? And this other guy on the panel said, every 4 to 6 years, the manager should figure on looking for another job. And obviously, I don't agree with that. I think longevity and long tenure adds to your family stability, the quality of life. Look, there are enough other managers out there. I don't need to be disruptive in your life. We're human beings first. So a guy sitting in the front row, this was at a CMAA conference, stands up and with tears in his eyes said, are you telling me, he says to the guy who said 4 to 6 years, are you telling me that since I've been at my club for 25 years, I've wasted my career? Now, come on. If you can be at a club for 25 years, look back on that with great pride. You want to be able to say to your kids, this is what I did with my career. It represented a big part of my life. And you want to be able to say to your child who may come to you one day and say, what do you think, Mom or Dad? Should I consider going into the private club industry as a career? You want to be able to say to that child, honestly, it's been a great run. It has provided us with a wonderful quality of life. If that's what you want to do, I stand with you. Or, on the other hand, you say, look at the terrible life we've had. We've had to move every 2.3 years because I've lost my jobs. You really want to get into this crazy business? So think about your responsibility to others before you just jump ship.
Now, when it just doesn't work out for whatever reason, there's things that can be learned, some lessons we can learn from those. I know that you feel that exit interviews are a very important way of gauging that. Can you tell me about that a little bit?
Well, you need to do exit interviews both of members who are leaving your club as well as staff who are leaving your club, whether they are leaving on their own volition or you've asked them to leave. It's important to get that feedback because if ever there is an honest time for people to tell you the straight skinny about your club and about the culture, that's the time you're going to get it. Whether you want to hear the feedback or not, and what you do with that information is something else. Some people just go through the process of doing exit interviews because it's a feel-good experience, perhaps, but then they don't apply what they've learned from that exit interview. Let's all learn from it. There are circumstances sometimes beyond the ability of anyone to control. Sometimes it's just a mismatch. The more thorough a board can be and a candidate can be in evaluating an opportunity, the more likelihood there is that it's going to last a while. Let me give you an example. You mentioned, Gabe, that the average tenure in the industry is 2 to 3 years. That's horrendous. The average tenure for searches that we've done over the last 40 plus years is over 8 years. There's a reason for that. And the reason is we provide candidates with a huge amount of information about our client club and the opportunity. And we provide the board with a huge amount of information about the candidates that they are about to see. So the decisions in the interview process in which we participate intimately, those decisions are based on fact and information. They are informed decisions. They're not just based on gut. So, for example, my son, who's been in business with me now for decades, it seems, has a favorite saying that there are two times in a person's life when he's perfect. Once when he's born, and the second time when he writes his own resume.
I like
So
that.
it's for boards to select somebody based just on paperwork in this people business makes no sense. But I can tell you there are a lot of clubs that have done exactly that.
Wow, that's scary. What are your thoughts on incentivizing club managers and creating bonus programs for them?
I think it's vitally important. The challenge, however, is coming up with the criteria. So many boards are numbers conscious, which of course you have to be to some extent, that they incentivize the manager based on control of costs as opposed to the quality of the member experience. So, for example, if you provide your manager with an incentive, let's say we're going to give you 5% of whatever you save in food cost, that manager could literally save you out of business. He or she could reduce the quality of product, cut the portions, and just make the whole experience terrible, but at the same time earn his or her bonus. If you do the same thing with labor costs, before you know it, Sally the server and Joe the bartender and the people that are familiar to the members who know your name, don't ask for your member number, greet you like they would, as I said, in cheers. These people are invaluable. Whether or not they're totally skilled or well trained, they're familiar faces to the members, and that's what members expect when they come into their club. If you start saving on labor costs by getting rid of those long timers because they may cost you a little more than a newbie, you're going to destroy the culture of your club. So the incentive needs to be based on a combination, I think, of objective and subjective criteria. Objective can be based on numbers. Those numbers should be something like how many new members have been matriculated, how have you reduced the numbers of members that we're losing. Factors like that can be objectified, but subjective should be things just feel better. The members seem happier. The results of the member surveys are better than they have been. The food quality is better. The staff seems happier. These subjective criteria really are what make a club. So when we hear members describe their club as their backyard, what they're not talking about is the labor involved in keeping the grass cut. They're talking about the comfort that they have in sitting in the rocker on the porch and seeing familiar faces and being known by their fellow members and by their staff. A club is a family of families, and when you incentivize your staff to do something that detracts in any way from that member experience, you're degrading the culture and the quality of that experience.
I love that advice, Harvey. I have one last question. I'm sorry that we're going to have to wrap this up, but one last question before we go. If there's one club out there, Harvey, that folks need to see before they die, what would it be for you?
Well, I'm tempted to say it ought to be the one club that you're most comfortable playing from your bag. But on the other hand, the country clubs or golf clubs that I've visited that I have on my personal bucket list, and I'm not a great golfer, my first criteria would be, where can I break 100?
Okay.
My next criteria would be, what is just a great experience with my friends and where I'm treated properly? And I would have to include in that some client clubs of ours, like the Mid-Ocean Club in Bermuda, Boca Grove in Boca Raton, Florida, magnificent gated community. But I'd also put on my bragging list Bandon Dunes, certainly in Oregon. Mm-hmm. And the one that I brag about all the time, where I learned that they don't accept mistakes on the golf course, is St. Andrews. I had a great experience at St. Andrews. My only recommendation is don't buy a $50 towel. I mean, you can't get your equipment dirty enough to be worth $50, or a $200 golf shirt. But great experience. Wonderful to be able to talk about the experience of having played St. Andrews.
I love it. Yeah. So how do folks get in touch with you or find out a little bit more about Search America?
Well, our website is searchamericanow.com. Don't forget the NOW now, searchamericanow.com. Our name is trademarked. However, it's such a terrific name that A lot of people out there are trying to use it. And let me tell you, it's extremely expensive to defend a trademark in federal court.
I bet.
So searchamericanow.com, or they can reach me anytime directly. I welcome telephone calls and love talking to folks. That number is 972-233-3302 in Dallas, Texas. We also have a presence in Boca Raton, Florida, and Los Angeles, California. And between my son Mark and I, as managing this boutique search firm, we're probably in 300 clubs a year. So get in touch with us. Chances are we'll be in your community sometime soon. We'd love to sit down and visit.
And you have a pretty active LinkedIn group, I know. Can you tell folks about that group and how they can actually be a part of it?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. It is an invitation-only or nomination-only group, and it has now about 3,300 members in 57 countries. The name of the group is the Club Advisory Council International. I love the E at the end of international.
Yes, very
it gives
European,
kind of a cachet. Yeah, gives it a cachet, kind of like the guy that introduces your show, Gabe.
Right.
there must be a reason for that. So it's the Club Advisory Council International on LinkedIn, and go take a look at the site. There's some great topics. It's basically a think tank of some of the finest thought leaders in the private club industry around the world.
Harvey, it was a wonderful pleasure to have you on today. You had so much good information to give us and really enjoyed having you.
Gabe, it's my pleasure. I'll be happy to do it again anytime. You have a great day.
I told you that was going to be good, didn't I? Well, we have a month full of great guests here on Private Club Radio. I want to tell you about a few of those coming up for your listening entertainment. Next week, we're going to be joined by Paul Levy. He's the Vice President of the PGA of America. And of course, the PGA of America has a hand in getting golf into the Rio Olympics. So we'll ask him a little bit about that. On August 22nd, we have Frank Vane, President of the McMahon Group. On the 29th, Cam Schultz, the Vice President of Marketing at VGM Club. It's going to be a fantastic rest of August. Hope you can join us back here each and every Monday. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to this show. You can have every new episode, right on your smartphone, right when it drops on Monday morning. Simply go to the podcast app on your iPhone. And if you're an Android user, either pick up the Stitcher app or go to Google Play Music, and you can download this feed. It's free, completely 100% free, and you'll get each and every one of our experts in your ears on Monday. Until next Monday, here's to your membership success.
Just because this round is over doesn't mean you can't enjoy the 19th hole. Check out privateclubradio.com for more. Private Club Radio is brought to you by Shake Creative, the premier marketing and design firm, helping prestigious clubs increase and retain their membership. Visit shaketampa.com to learn more.
Why do over 60% of Boardroom Magazine's distinguished clubs choose to partner with Club Essential? The better question is, why not? As the leading provider of club management and marketing software to over 1,400 private clubs, our unified suite of modules are designed to automate club operations while informing and engaging members. From websites to accounting and POS to CRM, online reservations, and mobile apps, Club Essential has all of your club's technology needs covered. Visit clubessential.com to learn how our experienced team can help your club. Again, that's clubessential.com.